Welcome to the Feminist Exec, the podcast where women in leadership share their stories, challenges, and triumphs. I'm your host, KP, and together we'll dive into the real talk behind breaking barriers, leading with impact, and redefining success on our own terms. Get ready to be inspired, empowered, and equipped to take your leadership to the next level. This is the Feminist Exec. Let's forge your future. Hello and welcome to the Feminist Exec podcast. I am honored today to have with us Cailin Radcliffe. Cailin is a VP of Marketing and Revenue Operations. She's driving growth in robotics through strategy, storytelling, and data. She's based in Toronto, where she balances work, motherhood, and life with her husband, her 11-year-old daughter, and a strong-willed Boston Terrier. So dog mom as well. Throughout her career, she's focused on making space at the table and building better ones when needed, metaphorically and actually. She does love to build things. So welcome, Cailin.
Thanks so much for having me.
So happy to have you. First of all, I love to start with the career journey. Tell me a little bit about where you are in your career and how you got there.
Oh, it's such an easy and tough question at the same time. So I've always thought about my career like investing. Only you are investing the one thing that you have, can only do one thing at once with, which is your time. So really it's about being intentional and thinking about what I'm passionate about, what I'm excited about. And I look for roles where I can have a big impact and help the business grow at the same time. And I was drawn to RevOps as a career before it even existed as function in businesses. And it was really about how I could bring together people, data, and processes to drive that growth. So it might look like my career has, on paper been a little haphazard, but every role has been about that. And I've loved every minute of it.
I love that, bringing together people, data, and processes. I know you're Canadian, so you say processes. I say processes in American.
Yep.
But you're also a VP of marketing, and you've held a wide range of roles, both from change management, transformation strategy, revenue operations, as you mentioned, and now marketing. How did you approach stepping into a role that maybe you didn't have as much prior experience with?
So interesting fact that will be relevant is that while I studied business and things relevant to what I do now, and the other half of what I did at university was actually a degree in the history of warfare.
Wow.
And I think why that's relevant is because I have this natural inclination to pick up a book. So when I face a new challenge, such as, stepping into the marketing role, well, I have, 15 years of working on the data side of marketing ops and know the job very well and have worked with many amazing CMOs. I reached out to a few of them. They definitely found it funny that I was going to be on the other side of the house because I had always approached marketing from this very data-driven side. And they had always led through gut. So it was probably the department in my career that I clashed the most with. Interestingly, early in my career. And I think it was as I grew realizing that the answer was actually both. So it's the perfect mix of art and science, I think, is what makes a good marketing team successful and grow, which I'm sure you know very well. But it was definitely a lot of reading. I love being uncomfortable. I never think that I know the answers. So I just approached it like everything else, open mind. And I'm just fortunate that the business and the team supported me while I did that.
There's so much in what you just said. So I want to dig into a little bit of it. First, we'll start with the marketing side because I think a lot of people have this perception that marketing leaders have to be like creative number one. But you said art and science and bringing data to that. Do you think that's really fundamentally changed how your business has been going to market, with your approach being from the opposite side of where a typical marketing career comes from?
For sure. Yeah. So two things to that. One, I think I was really fortunate to step into a team with a lot of creatives. And regardless of what my title is at any job, if you're an expert in something, I'm listening, I'm learning. So I think my personality lent itself well to that problem. And then what I was able to do for the business was bring the data side and look at marketing and just really dig in and understand what's working and what's not, and just double down on the things that are working, not do the things that weren't, and then always save space for things that we don't know about. that, we need to try. So make sure that that art isn't lost just because my personality is data and science.
That's really interesting. And I want to go back to this degree that you took because I've actually never heard of this as a major, the history of warfare. Why did you choose that as a major? And what do you think that's taught you about business? I imagine it's highly relevant to corporate America and some of the things that we face. But tell me a little bit more about why you chose that and what the impact has been.
Yeah, and I think it'll lend itself well to our mentorship topic later. But I had an amazing mentor at the time who said, anyone can do math, anyone can understand numbers. It's how you connect the numbers, how you understand what's happened in the past, and how you use that to make better decisions moving forward. And then obviously just to develop that really strong research muscle.
Hmm.
So, history is obviously open to interpretation, but dates are dates, facts are facts. And I think that's just how my brain was wired in the same way that now I try to ground all of my opinions in data. It's the same muscle, it's the same exercise where I revert back to what can I learn from what others have done? And how can I take that and use data to flip that forward to tell me what might be the best path?
And leveraging your history of warfare, I'm sure you didn't even have to learn the corporate lingo because so much of it is war-based, setting a stake in the ground, execution. If you think about a lot of the corporate lingo that we use on a day-to-day basis, it's very much warfare oriented.
Yes, unfortunately.
So you mentioned mentorship a little bit. What role has mentorship played, both giving and receiving, in your growth?
I think it's the number one piece of advice that I would give anybody at any stage of their life, of their career. I've been so fortunate to have amazing mentors and then been so fortunate to mentor some amazing people. I've learned in from both situations a lot, and it's definitely what has been a big part of getting me to where I am and what continues to build that muscle of learning and growing and hoping that I always feel that way about every situation. Like there's always something that I could do better or learn or change. I think that that's part of that.
I love that. So, I want to talk a little bit about your leadership style, your data background, your history in revenue operations, your degree in warfare. How would you describe your leadership style?
So I try to lead, and obviously I've never been led by me. So it's always a hard question to answer. I try to lead in the way that I like to be led.
Hmm.
So I try to give a lot of support. I try to be really open, tell my team, I'm always an open book. You can ask me anything. But just like I hold the bar for myself high, I do hold the bar for my team high. And admittedly, not everyone loves that. The fact that I want everyone to always be challenging what they know and learning and growing. I think that's amazing. And I get a lot out of that. But that's not for everyone. So I'm open about it. When I'm interviewing people, when people are joining my team, I try to be as transparent as possible. I'm also an introvert, and I think that plays into how I lead. So I'm probably never going to be sitting at my desk wondering how my team is doing, as bad as that sounds. But I'm the type of person that if you reached out, if you called me, you Slacked me, you emailed me, I will move mountains for you. So I think it's an interesting leadership style that has worked really well for some people and some teams, but not for everyone.
I think there's that nugget of be the boss that you always wanted that I've done myself or I try to do myself. I try to emulate that as well. And I think that that's such a powerful thing to think about in terms of how you treat other people with empathy. What would you do in that situation? What would you have liked? It's the golden rule, but applied to leadership.
It's the goal.
It's the goal.
Yep.
So when you have those challenging situations, like a team member that doesn't want to live up to the standards or the expectations that you're hoping for them, how do you approach that?
I mean, I try as best as I can to put myself in their seat and understand where they're coming from and figure out what our individual working relationship looks like. That I can still support them. They can still be growing and learning and raising the bar, but that doesn't have to look the same for everyone. So I think it's just about tailoring and me understanding how much I can push you before you are too uncomfortable. There's definitely a line. And I think you just have to figure out one-on-one with everyone, what that looks like.
That's such an important insight around different people's levels are going to be different. I remember early on in my career, one of my managers sat down and said, look, not everybody's going to approach everything the same way that you do or have the same expectations that you do. You have to meet them where they are and figure out, as you said, where the line is, where you can stop and help them get to that point. So, touching a little bit more on your leadership style, we've talked a little bit about since you've gone into these more advanced roles, how you're feeling like you have nothing to prove in your career. So, how has that changed your approach? How has that shifted your perspective?
I feel so fortunate to be at this stage of my career where I don't know if it's that I have nothing to prove. I have a ton to prove to myself. I hope I always will, but I just don't feel that same weight to be somebody that isn't always 100% me. I don't feel that same pause when I have something to add to a conversation or something that might be uncomfortable, but still productive. In, past roles, my younger self definitely used to hold back or try to be somebody or something else. And I feel like I've just gotten to this place in my career that, I've mentioned in the past year to a few people in conversation. I just love it because I no longer feel like I have to be anyone else or hold anything back or just pretend in any way.
Was there a pivotal moment that changed that for you, or did it happen over time?
I think it happened over time. I think just continuing to get more comfortable, put myself in more of those places, rooms, tables. But I think my daughter turning 11 and going through some challenges in life and growing and just having conversations with her has definitely helped because a big part of what I want to do is to show her that she can do anything she wants and be in any room that she wants and at any table. And if I'm going to push her and encourage her, it's like a show up and do it type motivation as well.
You got to show you by your example, not
Yep.
just give her advice on
Yep.
how she can grow. Yeah, I think that's really important. And talking about like getting into those rooms and as you said, taking a seat at the table, what are some of the things that you tap into, whether it's mindset or energy that allows you to take those seats and take that initiative?
Yeah. Some of it at this point is practice. Some of it is knowing that, sometimes I still do feel nervous or uncomfortable, or you still get imposter syndrome. I think all of us, I hope I don't forever, but, we're still here. And it's just about like quieting that voice and just reminding yourself that no one else got you in that room or to that table. You did the work. You built the relationships. You earned that job and that spot. So it's just like being able to recognize when you feel that and harness it to
Hmm.
do something with it.
I want to shift a little bit to what it's been like as a woman in your industry, in your job, because you've mentioned revenue operations, war, you're in robotics and automation, supply chain. It's a very male dominated industry. What have you learned over the years in terms of a guiding principle or something that's really stuck with you to be able to not only survive in those situations, but thrive?
I think a big part of it has been matching their energy.
Okay.
You know, Obviously we know each other and have joked about it before, but it's like sometimes in a room full of men, you just have to bring that exact same white male energy to the table and to the role. And same thing, like you earned it. You got there. You deserve it. And it's not being quiet. It's bringing your voice and still being you. I'm not telling anyone to go and be a man or a male. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but it's more just like that power. It helps when most of those tables and rooms are me and, a bunch of other male leaders.
I love that white male energy or that white male mindset, kind of stepping into that, even momentarily. But I think the core of what you said is you're not changing yourself. You're not changing who you are. You're just tapping into a different way of acting or responding or not doubting yourself, not letting imposter syndrome sink in. I love
Yeah.
that.
Little things like leaning in where you choose to sit at the table. A lot of times there's competing voices in the room, and sometimes it's just having the strength and the power to say, let me finish my thought, or it wasn't
Mm.
quite finished. Just like step into it and own it.
So, in those situations, have you ever been underestimated and how did you respond?
Oh, over and over again, our entire career. I think most women have probably, and maybe most people, maybe I don't have to just narrow it to women, but I think it's all in what you do with that. What I've tried to do again, same thing, is just, see it and feel it and then do something with it. I'm very much one of those people that if you tell me that I can't do something, I am going to do it to the best of my abilities. Even if it wasn't something that I was planning on doing, if I even feel that like 5% of she can't do it, I'll be there.
It's the rebel mindset. I read
Yeah.
a book earlier, like a rebel mindset. If you tell me I can't do it, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it 100 times better than you ever thought I would. I love that. So, how did you take a negative or a difficult situation where you were underestimated or something happened or someone had feedback that was challenging to hear? And how did you turn that into thank you moment or an opportunity for growth for you?
It's hard. Hard feedback sucks. Being underestimated sucks. But if you continuously tell yourself that from every moment in life, you can take something, that something can be negative, that something can be positive, it's gritting your teeth sometimes and just trying to see what positive, sometimes like squeezing a rock, something that you can get from every moment. And I think, my daughter and I had this conversation like 2 weeks ago. Part of it is I have practiced to never have bad days. I
Hmm.
will have bad moments. Sometimes I have bad hours, but very intentionally, I've practiced to never have bad days. And I think that's helped.
I love that. There's so much in that where you can like stub your toe and let it ruin your whole day, or you can stub your toe, maybe it makes you mad for an hour and you move on and you let it roll off of you a little bit.
Yeah.
I love that. So I want to pivot a little bit to a conversation that you and I had a while ago around both mentoring, but also this perception of being nice. And one of the pieces of feedback that you said was that you're not nice enough, and that we're often as women told that we need to be nice. Why do you think that we're still being told that? And what do you think that really means?
Unfortunately, I've had this conversation quite a bit recently with people that I mentor. And I don't know, I've grown to have this really negative connotation with the word nice. Maybe to your point, because so many times in my career I've told to be nice, to be nicer, that I'm not nice. So maybe I've just grown to have this negative association with it. But there's also just like the nice guy finishes last concept.
Mm-hmm.
And I think because it's so up for interpretation, what is nice? How do I attain this thing that is niceness? I understand what it is to be kind. I understand what it is to be respected and to give respect. All of those things I wholeheartedly agree with, but I can't accept this concept of being nice. And I've also never been in a room or been in a conversation where a male colleague has been told to be nice.
Hmm.
They're told that they have data-driven decisions, that they are persistent, they're strong-willed, they're assertive, all of these positive skewed words, and I'm told to be nice.
Where it's if you're doing the exact same thing that a male colleague is doing, you're being told that you're too aggressive or you're too coarse or something and you need to dial in. I think that nice definition is interesting because I'm relatively new to Minnesota, having lived here for 5 or 6 years. And there's this concept of Minnesota nice. I'm sure most listeners have heard of it, where it's everybody is so nice in Minnesota, but there's this backhanded, not a compliment. It sounds like a compliment, but it's not really. And, you don't know where you really stand with people because everybody's just so nice all the time. But to your point, that doesn't mean kind. It doesn't mean respectful. And I think that there's so much in that. So as you think about respect, what does that mean to you in the workplace? And how do you navigate around both earning it and giving it?
So respect is more, I think, about recognizing your skills and your contributions and, where you come from and how that shows up. And it's more about, regardless of maybe how you feel or a decision that's being made, I think it's just more about how you show up and how you represent yourself, and making sure that everyone feels comfortable, but not in a way that is you changing yourself so that they feel that way.
I think it taps into my next question around this idea of the emotional burden in the workplace, where you have respect and you can respect people and make them feel comfortable or just not uncomfortable. But women often take on this emotional burden of making sure that everybody feels happy and good all the time. Maybe it's tied to this perception of needing to be nice. Why is it, do you think, that women still carry so much of that emotional burden?
I think some of it's still just that's how society perceives our role. When you walk into a room, you will absorb the responsibility of not only how you make everyone feel, but how everyone else makes everyone else feel. And I don't know, it's just never been a strength of mine. So I've always been even more aware of it. How did they look? What was their facial expression when I said that? How did they respond? What was their tone? And there's a lot of emotional baggage and work that goes into feeling that responsibility and thinking you have to do all of that extra work to think about and analyze and understand and then respond to that.
Yeah.
Can be exhausting.
Yeah. It's almost like it's a motherhood type of a role that people are putting on you. Do you think that that changed when you had your daughter? Do you think your ability or willingness to take on emotional burden or other people's expectation of you to take that on changed when you became a mother or not?
I don't think so, but I think part of that is in how my husband and I intentionally decided to parent. So I think in these relationships where, we obviously have a daughter, we're both working, we both have careers, he actively took the role of the lead parent.
Hmm.
So the school calls, she's sick, every concert, every field trip, a lot of the burden of driving her and picking her up, that falls to him. And
Wow.
that was a choice that we made. And part of that is I just have these huge dreams and I want to do all of these things. And that means so much to me. And he doesn't necessarily feel the same way. Not that he doesn't love his job and his career and have big goals, but it was just a conversation and an intentional decision that we made. So I feel like I didn't have to change just because I became a mom. And I feel really fortunate to be able to say that and for that to be our situation. But, that I think that helped my resolve and my ambition and passion and how I show up because I didn't have to change to be a mom.
I love that. I think that's such an amazing example as well for young women who want to have a career and be a parent at the same time. And good on your husband for being willing to have that conversation with you and take on those additional responsibilities. I think partnership is a big key to that. And you mentioned you didn't take your husband's name in your career. Tell me a little bit more about what went into that decision and why you ultimately decided to keep your name.
We had this conversation early on when we were still dating, actually. And I
So
just said,
early.
yeah, like I've worked so hard to be me under this name. Like I did all these things and have accomplished whatever I've accomplished. And as we kept dating and he proposed, we even had the conversation, what if you took my name? Like what does that look like? And, ultimately we just both decided we loved who we were. And just because we were getting married, it didn't change that. And so we have different last names and we made the decision. My daughter does have his last name, but I hope that in the not distant future, it's more common for women to keep their name or at least have the discussion and for it to be your choice.
Yeah. I mean, that's obviously one of the first core tenets of feminism is the ability for anybody to make the choice for themselves, no matter
Right.
what their choice is, whether they
Yeah.
take their husband's name or not, whether they keep their career or not, to choose to be a mother or not. And that's such a core tenet. So it's really great to see an example of a strong woman who took the choice not to change her name and really had seems like a thoughtful conversation with your spouse about that as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Great example, especially for your daughter as well to see a variety of different
Yeah.
situations in the world.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I want to talk a little bit more about how women can more effectively support each other when we are in these different situations, whether it's difficult situations, difficult people. You mentor a lot of women through some of these challenging situations. Tell me a little bit more about some of your thoughts around how can we better support each other?
I think it starts with just having the conversations. And I think just like I talked about with people on my team, that looking different for everybody, I think that's the same in the workplace and in life. Some people like to feel things out loud, and that's okay. And some people, it's more of like a quiet conversation in a hallway. I've had people in the past only been comfortable calling me from their car or texting me. Like, I think it doesn't matter how it happens. We just need to continue to talk about things more, share experiences, because a big part of changing the way things work is knowing that you're not the only person feeling that thing or going through that. And there's power in people coming together and deciding what to do about it and what a solution looks like. And I've felt that, I hope I've helped others. So conversations, talking about it.
The conversation piece, I think, is important. And one of the things that I've thought about too is not just having a loud conversation, but having a quiet influence and helping each other, give people a heads up. Hey, this is a situation that I've been in with
Yeah.
XYZ person or company. Maybe you should double check your references or consider whether you actually want to make this move or work with this person or work on this project, or here's how I made this work for me and had a lot of success. So here's a couple pointers for how to better interact with this person. I know that one-on-one pull you aside conversation has helped a lot, I think, in different points in my career as well.
Yeah, and it can be uncomfortable,
Yeah.
and it can be with someone that maybe you don't even know that well. But I think that what's hurt me the most in my career is when someone hasn't said anything, or this like unspoken, I went through it, so you have to
Mm.
kind of approach to this. So I think the more we overshare and over communicate, there's no downside to that.
Having a strong network and supporting each other that way, I think, is really powerful. I mean, I've watched female executives go at each other. And as you mentioned, I had to go through all of this horrible stuff. So you have to earn your chops too. So I'm not going to
Yeah,
help you. And I think that can do a lot more damage than it's intended to. It's intended to kind of give someone tough skin, but maybe the opposite happens. There's a
agreed.
change in generation, I think, too, where women are coming up and helping each other more and making more seats at the table as we started off this conversation, making space, maybe even adding on to the table rather than having to fight over one seat.
I hope that everyone experiences this, but I feel like there's less competition between women where it used to be that we were all fighting for one seat. I feel that less now in my career, so I'm hoping that that's something that's widely experienced.
Do you think it's maybe an industry change, your specific environment, the people you get to work with? What do you think's the catalyst for that change?
It's a good question. I mean, there's not a lot of women in supply chain and robotics. So maybe it's just this feeling of forced community where we know that there's a finite number of us. So we've got to like stick together and promote each other. But also back to your point on the generational shift. I think that there's just a different attitude towards the tide rising all ships type concept, and I can cheer you on and love to see your growth and your success and know that that in no way changes what I've done or makes my career less of what it is or what I've worked for. So just the mindset.
I love that. I love that. How do you mentor more women to continue to build influence and take up more space and add those seats to the table? What advice do you give to those women?
I am fortunate to mentor some amazing women. Interestingly, they are all similar to me. So maybe I've just attracted a small group of like minded people, which has its upsides and downsides, I'm sure. But I think it's just the exact same thing. The more that you are open to, I do it's not about prescribing how they should live their life or drive their career forward, but it's more just about supporting them in doing the things that they're already on the path to doing. Maybe need to practice a conversation about how to get to the next step, or, just continuously reminding them that There's literally, I don't believe there's a dream that is too big. So, what's the worst thing that could happen? They could say no, or you could not get the promotion or not get the job. But if you don't try, you'll never know. And to me, not knowing is the most terrifying thing. So I think it's just like, how do we continue to like push each other to try? Where this old adage about, a man will apply for the job when he has like 10 or 20% of the qualifications, and a woman won't until she has 110% of the qualifications, is so real.
Yeah.
Well, how do we get them to say, that you're smart enough to learn the 60-80% of the role? Go for it.
And I think that also perpetuates a study that showed, I think McKinsey's report that showed that men are more often hired on that potential and women are more often hired on that productivity or that proven experience. So it's almost like we keep reinforcing the system against us because we're only applying when we have 110% of the qualifications versus saying this is a growth opportunity, like you did when you took on marketing, even though you hadn't proven that experience before. That's such a great example of trying and learning and succeeding at it. That's awesome. What's maybe one piece of advice that you would have given your younger self, especially early on in your leadership journey or throughout it?
So I think that if I could, a little bit different of a question, I think if I could go back and do one thing differently, it would be that maybe I overdid it a little bit.
How so?
Sense that, I was fully, maybe too aware that every room and every situation I walked into wasn't designed for me. Maybe I came on a little too strong in some of those. And I had some amazing bosses who helped me work on the people side, which wasn't making me nicer, but was making me realize that I could not get my back up in every room that I walked into. It definitely changes how I spoke and was received. And I never go into a room, obviously, hoping to upset someone. But I think because I went in with all my walls up to so many of those meetings and conversations, definitely changed some of my early working relationships with people where I probably didn't need to be as guarded. So I think if I could go back, I would recognize that the duality, the importance of both, showing up as me, but that being me. Like some of those meetings I went into and I was like a little robotic. Like I had to be this thing and get this point across. And that wasn't fully me. I'm a human being.
What caused that though? What caused you to have your guard up and to come on maybe stronger than you needed to?
I think it was just the frustration of being underestimated, being one of the few females in the room, and feeling like I had to work 10 times harder to do the same thing that I perceived someone else not having to work as hard to get or to achieve or to get recognition for. You could experience it in interaction.
It's an interesting dichotomy because you say you don't want to worry about being too nice, but at the same time you came off too strong. And I've been in situations where you can walk into a room and know that you're the only woman, feel that you're the only woman, and the moment someone asks you to take the notes or get the coffee, you're completely taken down, and then you almost like over respond.
Yes.
And maybe there's ways that we can approach the rooms where, not to minimize that action, like asking someone to take notes or to get coffee, because I think that's disrespectful in a way if that's not their role. But there's, I think, some ways that we can help each other through it. So, for example, I had an executive early on and we had an all-male meeting. We were in Germany. I think that makes an important point because German work culture is different. But this executive pulled me out of the room because everyone was ignoring what I was saying. He pulled me out of the room during a break and said, look, for the rest of the day, I'm going to defer to you because this is your area of expertise and it feels like no one's listening to you. So I'm going to defer to you every single time. And the rest of the afternoon, he did that. He gave me the space to be able to feel comfortable enough to bring my expertise to the table. So maybe there's a little bit of that dichotomy of like, we have our hackles up, if you will, in a dog sense because of some of the preconceived notions, and it doesn't help anybody. It helps to take the guard down and not assume that you're being left out or talked around, but come up with ways to figure out around it.
Yeah. And if they ask me to get coffee, not reacting.
Not being reactive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that probably comes with experience as well as you go through it. I want to touch on a little bit more of the personal side around what keeps you motivated. You have a ton of dreams. You've done a ton of growth in your career. What keeps you motivated, especially when things get tough?
I think the biggest piece is that as lame as it sounds, I love what I do. Have built a career that I want to wake up and do. And I think part of that is that muscle of getting something out of everything
Mm.
and everything being a learning moment, even if, still to this day, I have to remind myself of that sometimes. And I think it's that feeling that I'm never done learning, which means that there's no ceiling above me. I don't know what I want to do in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, but I want it to be big. I want it to be meaningful. And I want to be able to grow into this world that also supports my daughter in doing whatever she wants to do and my friends in doing whatever they want to do. And it's just surrounding yourself. You are who you hang out with. So I surround myself with people who have done amazing things, and wanting to be the least successful person in the room versus the most successful person in the room means that you always have this big thing to look to say, that could be next. I could do that. Why not?
I love that little switch because I've heard you don't want to be the smartest person in the room, but you're saying you don't want to be the most successful person in the room.
Never.
What does success mean to you and how do you define that in your life?
So I think success is whatever you want it to be. It is positive momentum towards goals, outcomes, and it means something different to everyone. So success for someone could be being the best stay-at-home mom ever, and I love that for them. It could be the best athlete. It's whatever you define as the end goal. And for me, it's about that impact. I want to have a big life. I want to take up a lot of space, and I want to make it easier and better for the people who want to do that after me.
I love that. Are there any habits or practices that you do that you think helps you show up as the best version of yourself?
I read a lot,
Okay.
and just like the most random collection of things and ideas, so that even if it's not how I think part of that like history muscle is understanding that everything that plays in and all of those inputs and all of those people and backgrounds, strengths and weaknesses all come together to do something, to result in something. So a lot of reading. I have a road bike. We did a 60-kilometer road ride this morning, my husband and I.
Nice.
So I think it's like the balance of having a stress outlet being really important. Hopefully that stress outlet being something physical and good for your body. You can, sit and stress about a lot of things, and, that impact your mental health. Go out and ride for 3 hours on a road bike, and believe me, you will have no time or ability to stress about things going on at work or at home or whatever, because you're just hanging on for dear life on your bike.
I love that. And you did that just this morning before the podcast. That's amazing.
Yep.
I
Yep.
love it. Well, I know you read a lot, and one of the new segments I want to do on this podcast moving forward is asking each guest what the one book that they would recommend that everyone should read. So what is that book for you and why?
Okay, so I'm going to give you 2 books.
Okay.
I couldn't narrow it down. I tried really hard. Although, shameless plug, I just bought this book. I haven't read it yet.
Okay.
So
What
I
is it
can't give
called?
her Women in Leadership.
Okay.
It's a bunch of collection of interviews of amazing female leaders and how they got to where they went in their career and their background. I haven't finished yet.
I'll have to add that to my TBR then.
So the first book would be Unapologetically Ambitious. I'm maybe going to butcher her last name, and I apologize for that. Shelley Shobo. Read it if you've ever felt imposter syndrome. It helped actually me and my husband navigate the parenting decisions that we made and the lead parent concept.
Wow.
The concept that there's no such thing as work-life balance. One of the things is always out of balance.
Mm.
And it's about recognizing that and the importance of that being a thing in a conversation. And then the other book is Guns, Germs, and Steel.
Well, that's a good one. Jared Diamond, right?
So that book I love because it helps your brain think about the choices that we make and the results that that drives, and how none of that was predetermined. So I just love that like frame of thinking and bringing myself back to like when someone says to me, we do that because it's the way it's always been done. Like, oh, I wish you would read this book and just think about like there's no such thing as the way that it should have been done. It's we made these series of decisions that got us to this place that led to these outcomes. And I love that frame of thinking.
It also kind of ties together a lot of different topics and shows the interconnectedness of everything, which I love. Those are great recommendations. So, Unapologetically Ambitious and Guns, Germs, and Steel. And then you've got a women in leadership book that you're reading as well. So, those are some great recommendations. I'll put links to them in the show notes as well.
Awesome.
Any final pieces of advice that you would like to leave our listeners?
I think just remind yourself that you are enough, that you earned your spot, that you worked hard. And I think when you're younger, that voice will be a whisper. And my hope is that by the time you're, 10, 20-ish years into your career, that voice is loud.
I love that. You are enough. I love that. Well, thank you very much, Cailin. This has been an enlightening, inspiring conversation. As always, it's a pleasure to see you and talk with you. And thank you so much for joining the Feminist Exec.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's a wrap on this episode of the Feminist Exec. Thank you for tuning in and being part of the conversation. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. A special thank you to our composer, Peter Legault, for the original music. I'm KP, and this is the Feminist Exec. Until next time, keep leading, keep rising, and keep forging your future.